welcome back to Money It Matters. I'm Richard Everhart Groves Jr. and our guest again today is Adam DeSimone. I mentioned a financial planner extraordinaire, good guy. Just to recap, last week we talked a little bit about one of the number one fears of retirement. Excuse me a second. One of the number one fears of retirement is outliving your money due to longevity or living longer, which is not necessarily a bad thing,
No.
but most people don't plan to live longer. Just to recap what that looks like, we talked about due to longevity, there's a possibility you could outlive your funds that you've stashed away underneath your bed, in the bank, or someplace. But they said that statistics show that if you're a 65-year-old couple, you make it to 65, there's a 50% chance that one of you will live to age 92. 25% that one will live to 97. As I mentioned, my grandmother, God rest her soul, lived to 100. She was a great lady. And then the other statistic is that people now are living 90. It says it's tripled since 1980 to 2010. People are living past the age of 90. So if you're not planning for longevity, you're doing yourself an injustice and those around you.
Yeah.
So this week we're going to talk a little bit about those other things that do impact your retirement, and your ability to actually retire when you want to, or maybe have to work longer because of the lack of funds, because of unexpected things that have changed out there. So, last week we talked about this whole idea of longevity.
Yeah.
What other factors, as I mentioned, do you see that are impacting? I know I've come across them a lot, but what do you see?
Yeah, so we had the pensions last week too, which was another thing. Those are being done away with, pretty much not being offered. You have 81% of people who are in retirement now have a pension, but only 24% of people who are still working have access to a pension when they retire. Now, the two biggest things, so, all right, we understand we're going to live longer. We understand we don't have a pension, so we're more reliant now on our personal savings.
Okay.
What we put in our 401k, our IRA, under the mattress, whatever it is, now we need to rely on that more heavily to retire on. That's going to be the base of our retirement income.
Well, by the way, under the mattress is not a good idea, folks. Those of you listening, you need to talk to me if that's where you have the money.
Yeah, we can do better than that.
Exactly. Sorry.
So the two big things you're going to encounter, I think, and we'll take these one at a time here, are losses and fees. And now when I'm talking to people, these are the two big things.
Right.
When I bring back up, now, we've been on a heck of a bull run in the market.
Okay.
People tend to forget, right? They tend to get a little bit wrapped up in euphoric and what the market's always going to do. But I remember having those conversations back in 08, 09, 2010, when that was still really fresh, of losing 30, 40, 50, 60% of their money. That can't ever happen again.
I think it's like a little bit like pregnancy. You ever talk to a person, a woman who's been pregnant, that time was very difficult.
Yeah.
Then they're ready to do it again. They've
Right.
forgotten. I think that's a little bit like what this is about.
Yeah, the pain wears off
Right.
to a degree.
It will.
So now when I talk to people, it's, oh, the market's doing great. I've been doing great. Absolutely. And I'm glad that your portfolio has, but we want to kind of hope for the best, prepare for the worst.
Right.
And when you're 20, 30, 40 years old, you can put your money in the market and let it ride because you don't have to start pulling it out for years, for decades even. So the fact that it's going to come back,
Right.
I hear that, well, it always comes back. Yeah, if you got time. If you got time, it will come back. But when you're closing in within those 10 years of retirement, or you're already in retirement,
Right.
there ain't no coming back.
Right.
Because once you start to pull money out as a form of income, now you're taking money out of it. If you lose money as well in the market, that's the double whammy. Now you see your account balance dropping precipitously
Right.
every month, every quarter, and you're not making that money back.
So you mentioned something else too. So your money's, let's take that scenario. Your
Mm-hmm.
money's dropping because the market does change, and folks, it is going to change.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or
Some
not,
point.
it has to. There's no way it can continue to go like this, right? And historically, that's just what it has been historically. But so we're talking about, let's say the market does change.
Mm-hmm.
For those people out there that expect it to go high, I'm sorry, but it will change. It starts to drop. What other things? Obviously, the money coming down, you're losing. But what other things are attacking your money?
Within the market, well, there's fees too. The fees are always a big thing. When I show people what they're actually paying in fees, a lot of times they're shocked. And fees are one of those things that they come out win, lose, or draw. So I've actually shown people in their portfolio where over 10 years their advisor made more than they did.
Right.
Let me tell you, you want to get somebody red-faced, show them that their advisor was making money when they were losing money. Because that money's coming out no matter what. So those two factors. But if we take the market losses first, because I think that's the bigger drop, the bigger instant drop to your account that you're going to see. We look at a couple things here. So we look at sequence of returns. So to explain that, Richard, I'll let you go into that a little bit. It's not just that you lose money, it's when you lose money. So essentially, sequence of returns is if you lose money very early on in your retirement, it hurts more than if you lose it later, even if the percentages are all the same. So say you lose 5% the first 3 years in retirement, it's way worse for you than if you lose it like the last 3 years in retirement, if that makes sense, because you're taking that big upfront hit out of your portfolio, and unfortunately, that's what a lot of people that I talk to are heading towards, because this bull run, like you said, I hope it goes on another 5 years. It would break, by the way, the all-time record for a stock market bull run if it went about 4 more years, because we're closing in on about 9 years. The record is 13 years, 87 to 2000. Right now, we're coming up this March in 9 years.
Well, you also mentioned another factor to me in terms of the gain, the interest that you actually gain. I think people think they're making a whole lot of money. You mentioned that it's
about 2.6%. The average investor, the studies that have been done, the average investor makes about 2.6% on their money. And there's a couple things that factor in. People try to market time their own portfolio. They get feelings of when things are good and try to sell or buy a stock at that time. And then losses and fees. If you add it all up, you've had some good years, but if you look at it on average, it's about 2.63%, which in retirement, you can do far better than that without even taking that kind of risk.
And here's the thing, I mean, those of you, we hear throwing the term around sequence of returns. Here's a real good factor. Like the example I always give is that if you had $100,000 in the market, right, and the market goes up 10%, you're very happy. The market goes down 15%, not very happy. But here's the challenge. So let's say that you started taking money out at that time. Let's say you're taking 4% out, $4,000 a year, which is typical of someone taking money out their account. But that market changes. So it goes up, you're happy, you take money out. Goes down, you take money out. Goes down again, you take money out. People don't. There's nothing that that helps you with that loss, even after you're taking money. Now you're taking that money out, and if you have it in the market, you're also there's also fees that are tied to it as well. So not only are you taking money out, the market is lost, and then they're taking fees out when it goes down. That's the sequence. When it goes back up, it goes back down. Right? So, here's a great statistic, and because if you get caught in anywhere between those things, it could determine how long your money could last. But I found one thing really interesting. It says that since 1990 to 2000, the market rose and fell 22 times, and it said only 3%, which still could be significant depending upon where you are. But here's the kicker. From 2000 to 2010, it was 102 times, meaning that it rose and fell 102 times. Again, where are you going to be when that hits? And that's what we're really talking about.
And the other part of that is the nature of when you lose money. So there's something called asymmetrical returns, and don't get turned off by that it's too technical. I'll explain to you what it is. So I'll ask people, I'll say, if you lose 50% in your portfolio, so say you have $100,000, you lose 50%, now you have $50,000. What kind of gain do you need to make to get back up to $100,000? And most of them say 50%. I lost 50%, I need to make 50% back. It's not the case. It's 100%. Because if you lose 50,000 and you're at 50,000, you have to make another 50,000, which is 100% of what you have left, to get back to 100,000. So there's this, it's harder to come back from a loss. It's even more hard to come back from a loss when you're taking money out because you have nothing replenishing the account. And that's the biggest thing as people get into retirement is if we can catch some of this stuff early, whether it's a few years pre-retirement. I'd love to get to everybody when they're 25 years old. Heck, I'd love to even get to everybody 10 years pre-retirement. It's when I see clients who are 72, 73 years old, and you could tell they're going to run out of money in 10 years. And there's really not much to stop that freight train because of what they're taking out.
Here's a great example. Speaking of 22 years, I met a young guy just the other day, and real sharp young kid, making a good amount of money, works for a company. And has a pension, he's in the union and so forth. Long story short, his dad has been teaching him. He's one of those kids that pays attention. You know how if you have children, they don't always pay attention to you because they think they know more? So long story short, I showed him this one program. This, for those of you who, have young people who, The earlier you start, the more you have. It's called compound interest.
Yeah.
For those of you who don't understand, that means your money continues to make money on top of the money. So we put them in a very small little program, and spending like $133 a month for this policy. But when he turns it on at 70, because we're looking at what happens if Social Security's not there, it's expected to give him something like $22,000 a year until he's 100.
Wow.
And people say, oh wow, but because he's 22,
Yeah.
he started young. And these are some of the things that, when you're 65, you can do if you got a lot of money,
Yeah.
but at 22 it makes more sense. And then one of the other things I talked to, was going back to the whole loss of money, the sequence of returns, taking money out. The one other factors that people don't consider is inflation, right? And most people don't even understand what it does or how it works. But I always I give the example of, it's like a hungry child, right? You have your child, you're able to feed that child with $10 when they're born, right?
Oh yeah.
And that child keeps growing. Now it costs you $15 to feed that child. Now the next child, now it's $20, and it's $40 to feed the same child.
Yeah.
That's inflation.
Yeah.
It continues to grow for the same child. And a lot of people don't understand that. So if you lost money, just like we're saying,
Right.
5-10 years ago, 100,000, they dropped 20%, and then you got it back 10 years later, that money is not worth the same amount of money.
That's a great point. Your purchasing power is decreasing at the time that you need it the most.
Exactly.
And that 2.6%, by the way, that I said the average investor gets, that's about inflation.
Yeah.
It's about 2 to 3. You're barely outpacing inflation, if at all. So you're really not making any money. You're trying to maintain ground. And that's a huge issue when it comes to how long is this money going to last. Fees are the other thing that I think are vastly underestimated by most people when we really dig into their account and see what are you paying in fees. The average mutual fund that's out there right now, there's ones higher, there's ones lower. I've sold a ton of mutual funds in my day. I think there's maybe about, I don't know, there's tens of thousands of mutual funds out there. There's maybe 10 I would invest in as far as being any good.
Right.
And, most of them, I would say there's good mutual funds out there. Most of them, when you really look at the fees versus what they've given you, they haven't given you much.
Right.
The average fee percentage is about 1.5%. So that means out of a $100,000 investment every year, you're paying $1,500, regardless of what that mutual fund does. Regardless if it does well, if it does poorly, if it goes down 40%, you're still paying for it. And the same thing for a money manager. If you have somebody who's doing a money management on your account, and I'm not opposed to that either, just knowing exactly what you're paying for, win, lose, or draw, that person is taking another $1,000, $1,500, and that all adds up.
Right.
When you're looking about turning on retirement income, you're looking about somebody getting $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 of retirement income. You start taking out chunks of $2,000 here, $3,000 there, $4,000 there. That's a big deal.
It's interesting. I just read. I was on this on the web. I was looking at this one company. People heard of the La Motley Fool, and they estimated that those fees over time could amount to somewhere in the neighborhood $200,000+ of your hard-earned money that you don't get. Let me preface that.
Yeah.
That's money you are not getting, and that person who is managing it or that organization that has that fund always gets. And I say always because the fees are there whether you make money or not.
Yeah.
It's not a good thing.
Yeah, it's your money. I've shown people, like with all the fees, it's your money. So you're taking all the risk. You earn the money and you're taking all the risk in the market. Yet the mutual fund company and the money manager, your financial advisor, made more than you did on it.
Right.
They didn't take any risk.
Right.
They're playing with monopoly money. They're saying, oh, we'll put this here, so be fee sensitive. There's nothing wrong with that. Be very sensitive to the fees that you're paying because that's money that's coming out of your account. Now, you're not cutting a check for it. It's nice and easily line itemed out of your account.
Right.
So it doesn't hurt as bad as having to write a check. But I guarantee you, if you had to write a check for $2,500 a year, right, for your mutual fund fees, and another $2,500 a year for your advisor fees, you'd think twice about it.
Most definitely. And we're not saying there's anything wrong with advisors. Don't get us wrong here. We're not saying that. We're just saying be prudent.
Yeah.
If you have one, when I talk to the clients that I talk to and Adam we talk to, most of what we do or what I do, particularly on our side of retirement planning, is to secure your money so you don't lose it in the future, and that you can have a stable. You can actually look at it and really determine what that's going to look like. Financial planners can't do that because there are no guarantees within the programs typically that they work with.
Yeah.
So most of what we're talking about here, and we haven't talked about solutions yet, but we will get to that in one of our segments, is the fact that there are ways to mitigate and make sure you keep your money when it's needed. I think that's the main thing.
Yeah, I think there's huge, and to just underline that again, there's huge problems with your retirement accounts. Like, understand that there's huge problems that could affect you if you're not prepared for them. If you've thoroughly prepared, you have guaranteed income sources in retirement. Because with me, don't show me what you might make.
Right.
Show me what you will make.
Right.
All right. Social Security. Imagine Social Security gave you a range. Well, you'll get it between $1,000 and $2,000 a month.
Right.
Most people would not like that. If you had a pension, well, you get between $1,000 and $2,000 a month. Now, what is it to the dollar?
Right.
Because I'm trying to plan on a fixed budget, and I have fixed income coming in. I need to know what that's going to be, and that's all we're trying to do in retirement. We're trying to give people more safety, more security, more stability, so that when they enter retirement, they can feel free. I have so many people that can retire financially, but mentally they feel like they don't have enough,
Right.
or they don't feel like they've planned enough. And to see somebody say, I can retire.
Mm-hmm.
I'll have enough money. If I have these guaranteed income sources all coming in, I can actually retire comfortably knowing that I have enough money.
Right.
It's a very freeing thing.
Here's a challenge. I was with another client, actually, we're going to see him this weekend, and one of the things that we all get caught up in is how much we're making. I mean, the market is going up, and as Adam alluded to earlier, people are like so happy. I talked to one client, I'm making 20%, 29%. I'm like, how long have you been making that? Historically, that's not how. Historically, they say it's like 6.7% over time, over a 25-year period. So no one's making 29% on their money every year. It just doesn't happen.
No.
And to throw in there, you mentioned Social Security. Here's the other kicker here, and we haven't gone into it, and if people would like, we'll discuss it another time. But most people don't collect all their Social Security. We call it the full retirement age. Most people retire or take that money prior to that at like age 62. 42% of men take it at 62. 48% of women take it. And maybe you need it, whatever that is, but you lose about 30% of your income by just doing that.
Yeah.
So if you're planning for a future, that's going to be you can depend on. You have to look at all these factors, So and that's what we try to help the clients.
We have a great stretch strategy, and this is not the video for it, but a great stretch strategy to bridge the gap between that age 62 and full retirement age, where you still are getting that money. Because we don't want to be pie in the sky. I get why people take it at 62.
Right.
They need
right.
it.
They need it.
Or life expectancy. So, I have it now, it's better than potentially having more later. But if there's a way to stretch that, if there's a way to bridge the gap between 62 and 66 or whatever the full retirement age based off their year of birth, then now you can lock in so much higher of a benefit for the rest of your life. And as we talked about, people living longer and Social Security being one of their main pillars, what they're going to live on, that would be huge. Yeah. Huge. But I'm going to that another time.
I know. Well, guys, we've actually run our course of time. We will follow up with this segment next week. And we're getting closer to talking about some of the solutions that you can use and we have implemented for our clients and are looking to help those friends and families and those people that are listening. Please tell your friends and family about the segment. You can go back and look at them again. If you have some questions, send it out to me on Facebook. And next segment we can talk a little bit about those things and some of the challenges that you may be having, and we can do that offline. And again, Adam, I want to thank you for taking your time to come in and give some words of wisdom. I'm Richard Everhart Groves Jr., and this is Money It Matters. Thanks, everybody.